The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel. We are at different parts of the globe this morning, or at least the old Big Eight. Chris Schmidt, great to be with you. We are in South Denver. It is absolute Stanley Cup madness and also Husker night with Rockies baseball. We are on the road for Junior's Legion team. We're playing some baseball. Castle Rock was the venue yesterday, the great home of Mike Knox, former Nebraska linebacker. So that's why I'm on the road. Elijah has his coffee IV in studio in Lincoln. Mark Kraynak in his Husker den in Omaha. Fellas, good to be with you. We are streaming live this morning on ESPN Lincoln's Facebook and also ESPN Lincoln's Twitter handle. Numbers to get in at 466-3776 or 800-825-5865. That's how you get in touch with us. You can also interact with some comments on Twitter or Facebook. Kraynak, you look well-rested, my friend. How we doing?
I'm feeling okay. Are you inside of an Embassy Suites? It just kind of has that vibe.
Yes.
Where I think you're going to go to the manager's special coming up tonight, and you're probably having the buffet this morning.
Look, fellas, I need someone to just take me out back and put me out of my misery. We went to dinner late.
Let's go Old Yeller on you here.
Yes, it is Old Yeller time because I was up a little later than I should have been. I was well behaved compared to past decades. And Kraynak, you've been on the road with me for those. And it's all good, but you get to a certain age and you think you can eat certain things. Yeah. And right now, I'm fairly certain there's a cloud around me. That folks just need to stay away. So I'm in the middle of Embassy Suites here in South Denver.
Yeah.
And I feel miserable, quite frankly. But you know what? It'll get flipped around. It'll get turned around. Next commercial break, I will beeline for the $17.99 Pepto-Bismol that is at the gift shop trinket area up front. But no, it's been a good week and a busy week in regards to Nebraska. Another rendition of Friday Night Lights. Nebraska able to make some things happen on the recruiting trail early in the week, and you know what? We're less than 75 days away from Ireland, Kraynak, and I know that makes you smile.
Yeah, it's coming a lot sooner than you would think, and of course, the Huskers are also releasing quite a few social media clips of the workouts, the summer workouts. I've heard they've been working harder than they ever have. I've heard that the summer workouts have been more difficult than they've ever been before.
Good.
And that's good. And you know, the guys look good there. Guys look good. But Friday Night Lights, 300-plus folks coming in. Today you'll have the pipeline camp, so it'll be kind of the younger offensive lineman prospects that come in today, but you alluded to it, the Riley Van Poppel commitment earlier this week, and dude, he gets pretty high praise. Like one of the higher rated and better looking defensive line prospects that Nebraska's gotten in quite some time. And knowing that he comes from professional stock, albeit a different sport. Father Todd Van Poppel being a pro pitcher, that's always a good thing too.
You were a big, I'm sure you were a big Van Poppel guy. We all were, children of the 90s that remember Van Poppel as the next phenom that we all wanted to collect. Riley's got a really good body type and frame, and some nice things are projected for him on the interior. And, you know, it kind of goes more into that brick and mortar aspect of getting interior that is super fast and athletic, but also they've got to be able to handle Saturdays in November against Wisconsin, against Iowa, against Minnesota. I mean, you got to be able to do both and get after it. We see the summer workout videos. We know there's excitement, there's trepidation as well, and it's also, Kraynak, 'tis the season for prognostication when it comes to Athlon, when it comes to Phil Steele, when it comes to the world of college football. The Hail Varsity Yearbook release party is coming up Thursday at the Hail Varsity Club in La Vista, which is a sweet venue. College World Series is going on. So, I mean, there's a lot happening for Nebraska fans. But overall, Kraynak, the Husker fans you bumped into, what side of the dial is the direction pointing? More optimism or skepticism? More fear or excitement?
Man, that's a really good question, because I truly feel like it is more split down the middle than I can ever remember.
See, I feel like it has to do with how much money they have on the over on the win total this year.
That's
gambling interest.
No, but really, there are enough folks that I've talked to that are, legitimate fans that could name, multiple players from multiple teams in multiple years, right? That's like, and I hear everything from, it's just got to work with all these transfers. You get all these transfers in, and these guys, obviously, they know how to play, and they're ready to go, and you don't need to worry about them being rookies and developing. And of course it's going to work, right? Like, there's quite a few folks like that, and then there's others that are just shaking their head like, come on, you really think a Band of Mercenaries is going to get this thing done? Right? And that's really, those are the two sides of the spectrum right now. And
that's funny.
Quite honestly, I'm Switzerland here. I'm right in the middle of that, because I'm just like, this team, this program has been the most impossible program to predict for like 2 decades now. I mean, they're ridiculous. They're impossible. They're impossible to predict. Like, whenever people, hey, what are your predictions for the season? You're like, have you watched the last 2 decades? You think I have any clue what they're going to do? You think anybody saw 2007 coming, or 2017 coming, or any of the Scott Frost years coming? It's just like, no. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to get 3 wins or 10. I don't know. Do you? Do you really?
You talk to folks, and it's fun with, Kraynak, you love this, man. Between being a volleyball dad and a baseball dad, you're on the road as well. And, folks, it's fun to sit and have a beer after a game or before a game, or in some instances, you got a Yeti cup during a game, and just shoot the breeze while there's a pitching change or something, and the topic of Nebraska football comes up, and everybody knows somebody, right, that has a take on it, and the opinions also vary. Not with my money or your money am I betting that it goes well, is some take. This is the year. You love the changes. It can come together. If Mel Tucker can do it, why not? Why not Scott Frost? When it comes to just hitting the lottery in the portal, Nebraska's gone very heavy that direction, and can he strike lightning twice in the same league? And I think you got to give Nebraska credit for their commitment to getting this thing flipped around, but you just still don't know, because you are acquiring without, and you'll do your background, but it's still kind of winging a prayer with the chemistry aspect, and this month being so important for that. And the narrative that you hear and that is most important, I think, to me in the room is offensive line's got to be money. It's got to be incredible. Yeah. But, man, you're going to need to have really good quarterback play, or competent quarterback play. And does that mean it's Casey Thompson? Does that mean it's Chubba Purdy that seems to be getting, a push? Well, don't count Chubba out. I mean, there's that narrative out there as well. How are how are teammates connecting with the quarterback room? And there's still a large contingent of guys that have been on campus that aren't transfers that are trying to get this thing flipped around. A lot of the offensive linemen that really like Smothers, and they really like Purdy. And, man, they're working with Casey Thompson. So that dynamic's super important because you've got the Garrett Nelsons of the world that are absolutely deathly tired of getting beat and so close and yada yada yada, and then you bring in a new bunch of guys, and can the old guard connect with the new guard and put their right foot forward and I'm going to air quote here as you're watching us on ESPN Lincoln's Twitter handle or Facebook Live on ESPN Lincoln, with a manageable schedule. And that's the other part of this. What exactly is manageable in the Big Ten? Right? Where's the surprise win that gets you, all right, they're back and they're ready to go? And where's the, oh no, they just did what? They dropped the surprise game. Ohio State's dropped surprise games. Michigan's been upset in Big Ten play. Purdue has been on both sides of the ledger. They've had the high of beating Iowa. They've had the low. Who did they just lose to, right? I mean, so, and even Illinois has dirtied their way into a surprise win or two, despite some really bad seasons. And out of the blue comes the Northwestern to find their way to Indianapolis 2 out of the last 4 years. So that dynamic is extremely intriguing on top of this. Here's 15 dudes. Their history, their talent, their stats in college football say a lot and say good things. Does it hit? Does it pay off?
Think of how ridiculous it sounds. Whether or not it's true, it's fine. But where it's like, well, with the new offensive line coach, Donovan Raiola, what the team is doing now is they're firing off the ball and they're blocking people harder. We just
talked about that last night.
You're like, oh, okay. Is that what we're doing now? Oh, Austin forgot to tell them to, come
Austin's
off the
only
ball.
Put X number of guys in the NFL. Yeah, I mean, ooh.
Yeah.
Right? Well, no, I think Raiola's going to be nice.
Now the offensive line's going to start blocking people harder. That's what's happening now. It sounds so ridiculous. Maybe it's true. I'm just trying to understand how that light bulb didn't come on before. Like what? Where it's like, I mean, are we to believe that Austin was just like, nope, not gonna have these guys come off the ball and hit people. Not gonna do it. That's not what we do at offensive line. And Frost is just like okay with it so like, what are we even talking about, right? And will we really be able to see if that's the case or not? We'll see. And I know offensive line's a little more nuanced, and there could be some truth to it, right, in terms of styles of sort of catch and release versus like spear fishing. All right, there's a little bit of a difference, right? Like they're both fishing, but one of them's a little bit more aggressive than the other one.
Just a shade.
So will we see that? Will we see an overall more aggressive team? And then, quarterback-wise, I know Casey Thompson came in with the fanfare, but he has not won at a high level. Neither of these guys have. So is one of those quarterbacks, do they lend themselves to winning more? Because if it's just about skills and ability, then you do everything you can to keep Adrian Martinez here. Skills and ability-wise, dude was fine, right? But in terms of being able to having that X factor to pull off the W, that didn't really happen much, right? Obviously. So which of the guys that Nebraska has now gives you the best chance for that? Because that is going to be the number one thing, if it hasn't been already, especially in the month of September. Like you got to start racking up some W's, like quickly. And I know there's the whole talk of, well, it's not about the results, it's about the process. The process, you focus on the process, and then the results take care of them. Not in September 2022. No, it's about the results.
Well, and this
talk about the process all you want. You better rack up
transitions
some
well.
W's in September 2022.
Well, and
Period.
the other part of it, too, Hail Varsity Radio weekend here. I'm in South Denver. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak in Omaha. Elijah Herbel is in Lincoln as we are covering the old Big 8 just for you region on the road for baseball. The other part of it, too, is what's the momentum like towards the end of the year? Is it bowling? Yes. Is it how do they look towards the end of the year when it comes to Trev Alberts' mind's eye, right? The undocumented or posted air quote metrics. You know, what's the metrics we speak of? Are they in Trev's mind, or are they on a whiteboard somewhere?
Poinsettia or bust.
Is it 4-1? Is a 4-1 start and a 1-4 finish? Does the math you do to get to 6, 7, or 8 matter? And you know you want to finish strong, and I really think it's going to be a lot of fun for once. That's a bold prediction. November will be fun. Does that mean they go undefeated? No. Does that mean they finally get over the hump and knock off a couple of teams you want pelts on the wall from? I think so. I mean, I think you need to go at worst 2-2 in November, and as you finish that stretch, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, Wisconsin, that's okay to ask for if you're a Nebraska fan. You're supposed to get better as the season goes on, and I think November will be pretty telling. I think Nebraska, they should have a bowl bid sewed up here by the time they reach November. That's not a lot to ask for either, despite these question marks.
Yes, it is.
What's up?
That hasn't happened since 2016, man. It's a bit to ask for. There are human beings
You
walking
think
around
it's
the
still
planet right
think
now.
it's still a big ask?
Well, there's 7-year-olds walking around that haven't seen this whole thing happen.
This kid's going into first grade.
Yeah, there's like,
Which time? I mean, you know.
There are like lives that are, there's 7. That's a bit of time. Remember thumbing your nose at the Poinsettia Bowl or the
Yes. And
Chick-fil-A.com Bowl?
Some of us still do.
Yeah. Remember those days? Remember how great that was? To be able to be like, gotta go to the Holiday Bowl again. Bunch of crap. What are they doing? What are they doing? Getting to the Holiday Bowl. I know it's
This
a
is
good bowl, but
Alamo
not
Bowl
really.
garbage.
I know. And now it's just like that's the holy grail.
Hey, Elijah, how does New York City and the pinstripe sound?
No
Motor
complaints
City
from me.
Bowl.
No Yeah, I'll go to Detroit. I'd love going to Detroit. I hear it's beautiful in December.
You're it.
Beautiful.
Any
right?
town in America where Nebraska is playing in December is a beautiful, beautiful place in my book.
Man,
Let's
it
get
is
to
shifted.
Shreveport.
Man.
That's where we at.
We
Where we at?
we have Nebraska, according to our friends at 24/7 Sports. These are the national writers. They've had some bold predictions for college football. They have Sparty finishing 4th in the Big Ten East while they're still in East Division. They have Nebraska starting 5-0. That includes a win over Oklahoma. That includes making Kraynak smile in Ireland. That includes taking down Oklahoma. You get off to 5-0. And then you get a bye. That means you beat Indiana. And then you've got Rutgers on the road.
Start looking up
7th.
Detroit flights at that point. You start looking up, like, let's go, Motor City.
Do you celebrate when they get to 6 wins this year?
That's a cause for mild celebration.
Yeah.
I don't think you go streaking down 172nd and Dodge or anything.
No, it isn't.
Or maybe you moon somebody out there.
It is an O Street cigar time at midnight.
But it could be
That's
like
funny.
pop open that old bottle of 1971 Chardonnay you got sitting around, like 6. I think it's 6 wins this year. I mean, Come on. You know how long it's been? I was a junior in high school the last time Nebraska made a bowl game. A junior in high school. That's kind of ridiculous.
That's crazy.
I think we could pour some on the curb, right?
But
Huskers pass.
I also think it's
there's some sort of ceremony.
I also think it's interesting we've got to the time of year where the national media has changed their tune, and instead of being really down in the dumps about this Nebraska team, they start going like, oh, you know what? We can get some clicks here, and we can start making some bold. Oh, Nebraska's going to go 5-0 here through the first month of the season. Oh yeah,
click.
It's that time of year again. I didn't know if it was coming this year, but
it's not unrealistic though. It's not. It's not.
And that's the worst part.
Oklahoma is completely a new program, just like Nebraska is, right? Like honestly, it's all the guys that participated last year, like almost all been replaced on both sides.
I want to get Elijah's thoughts because he's close to some of the folks on that offensive line. You mentioned, you were a junior in high school the last time Nebraska went bowling. Now you're a full-grown college graduate with a porn stash.
Mm-hmm. A lot of change.
So I'm interested in Brock Bando, teammate of yours. He's a super senior. You've got Hickson. That's ongoing right now while no one's popping pads. You have guys that have been a part of the program quite a while. You've got new pups that are coming off injury that you need. You have to have Prohaska and Turner Corcoran at a high level. You also have guys that have either transferred in or have been in the program. Bando's one of them. Hickson's another. Let's handicap this offensive line race for a moment when it comes to center and both tackle spots and even the other two on the interior. You've got to replace Juergens, and that narrative's shifted over the last 3 years of what you have and now what you need to reload with. And Bando's a guy, I think, Elijah, you tell me, man, he's seen it all. He's been through it all. He's a guy that really has got in for that guard spot, but has a lot of talent. He's persevered quite a bit, and that, to me, that's really important because if you're a team that can persevere, you'll be able to find a way to win a couple, 3 games that are really tight, theoretically. Well,
you look at the offensive line race. This is something Will and I actually talked about with Brandon on Thursday. Whenever we called him up, and the offensive line actually does feel like it's starting to come together, despite all the uncertainty in the spring of who's going to be where. Are guys going to be moving around? You didn't really know what to have, but it only a couple of short months, you go from not knowing where anyone's going to be to, Prohaska's coming back well off the knee injury, and it sounds like he's going to be a full go for fall camp. And if that's the case, I think you can pencil him in at left tackle. Based on how Newelly played last season, I think you can pencil him in at left guard, even though it does sound like there's going to be a battle for that left guard spot. I think Newelly's the guy you can pencil in there. Trent Hickson, sounds like you can pencil him in at that center position. There's going to be some competition. It sounds like they really like his move from guard to center, and he's a guy you can pencil in there. Right guard, it now sounds like they're moving Turner Corcoran from right tackle down into right guard. That was the news out of this week, and almost sounds like he's a pencil-in guy there, and then it leaves you a race at right tackle where you assume Bryce Benhart's leading the charge, but you also have a transfer in Hunter Anthony that is going to make a push for it as well. And from all the uncertainty, I mean, even with the new position coach, you always expect it to be an open race, and I think we've started to move past that where now you're starting to get a pretty good idea of who the guys along the offensive line are going to be, and it's a lot of guys we've seen a lot from, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's up in the air in my book. Whenever you look at how it performed last year, the offensive line as a whole, you go, well, it's a little bit worrisome. These same guys are going to be the guys that are playing this season, but then you also look at the development side of things, and with a new offensive line coach, they're going to be firing off the ball, as Mark said. So maybe it's cause for optimism. But with the transfers they brought in from Hunter Anthony from Oklahoma State, as well as
Kevin Williams from Northern Colorado.
Northern Colorado by way, or sorry, I'll say Omaha North by way of Northern Colorado.
Yeah.
You thought those guys were going to be making a push, and now as you get a little closer to the season, you're not hearing their name as much, and I think that puts a little bit of worry into my mind, but maybe the development from guys that you were expecting to be not superstars, but really solid pieces of your offensive line. We're talking high 3-stars and 4-star recruits. Maybe they're finally starting to come into their own.
Well, Kraynak, you know that it takes a long time to water and get good on the lines of scrimmage. And Nebraska, either out of necessity or just this is the best we have, a lot of years has played a lot of young people. So I'm not ready to shut the book on Benhart, on Piper, on Hickson, on a lot of these guys. And they've got a new voice, a new coach, and they've still got plenty of time to improve and kind of streamline their craft. But on the other hand, you've gone out and got Williams. You've gone out and you've got Hunter. And you're still relying on Corcoran, who doesn't have he has one full season under his belt. You're relying on Teddy, who has a handful of starts, and Teddy's really good, don't get me wrong, or at least we think he's really good. You're relying on a freshman, for the love of God, at left tackle, coming off the trifecta knee issue. I mean, that's scary. That's scary if you're a Nebraska fan.
So let's book Detroit, Dave. Let's do it. Yeah, a lot of questions, as there often are. Probably more so this year than a lot of years past, though.
That is Mark Kraynak, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Weekend Edition. It's Hail Varsity Radio. That is a waterfall behind me in a South Denver embassy. They have all three throwback jerseys at the front desk here for you, Elijah Herbel, of the Avs that are going into action with the Stanley Cup tonight. And we'll step aside for the rewind. Coming up, Gary Barnett joins us. It's Hail Varsity Weekend presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Hello, listener. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to let you know about a special deal just for listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast. We're offering $10 off the annual subscription price. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Now back with Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, with Chris Schmidt and Mark Kraynak.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, into Hour 2. We're switching it up just a bit. We are off to Colorado to see Coach Barnett. No, I'm kidding. The doors would be locked, but we need to talk to Coach today because I'll be on the way to Colorado tomorrow. Coach, how's the week doing?
Week's going well. We had some nice, cool weather come through here, although it's going to be gone by the time you get here. But, yeah, things are going well here.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, your desire to have a beer at a Rockies game Saturday night is what?
Oh, listen, that's top drawer right there. That's a great place to go to a game. I don't know how much of a game you'll see, but it doesn't make any difference. You know, when you go to a baseball park, you're just part of history and nostalgia and baseball. And so, yeah, that's a great place to go. I mean, it's a great stadium, and hopefully you get a good game. But yeah, it's a party down there.
Yeah, it's fun, and that's some of the plans for Junior and his team on Saturday. We'll get to some football in a minute. I want to get your thoughts, though, on the U.S. Open. That gets underway tomorrow out in Brookline, Massachusetts. And a thought from what you've seen and read with some of the different press conferences. Of course, John Rahm, pretty impassioned. I loved his soundbite from yesterday. Phil just looks like he's aged a little bit. Rory's been outspoken. And oh, by the way, yeah, it's another major on deck tomorrow. What have you made of golf this week, the drama?
Well, it's, in one way, it's really good for golf. And so it's, I mean, the pandemic alone did more for golf than anything that's ever happened. But now, it's the old any publicity is good, and there's a lot of publicity around golf right now, the LIV and all the things that are being said. It just for guys in the sports business, sports radio business, it's probably pretty good. You don't have to worry about what you're going to talk about each day, but yeah, they just keep providing sound bites and hits and news, so it's pretty cool. I mean, it's interesting, and I did get a kick out of Rom, and he is a member of the club that I'm a member of in Arizona, and I got to know him just a very little bit when he first joined and just coming out of ASU. And he's an impassioned Spaniard, man, and Rory's sort of seizing the horns right now. He's sort of taken over speaking for the league or for the PGA and for the tour players, and it's sort of good to see that him sort of becoming so mature and being someone that everybody likes to watch and listen to and sort of roots for it out every doggone event. So, yeah, a lot of stuff going on, and I like Justin Thomas in this event. I don't know who you like, but he's playing so well and he's so good in majors. I think he's going to be hard to beat.
I have punted on projection, and usually that's not me, but I don't know. I mean, I know of Brookline. Have you played out there? Have you played this course?
No, but I have a good friend here in Boulder that was a member there and plays it a lot, or has played a lot. And, I think it's a heck of a golf course, and it's going to be a challenge. And if they let the rough grow like they usually do, that's going to be a good tournament to watch.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, U.S. Open thoughts, some college football thoughts, a couple of interesting stories out, one with Adam Rittenberg at ESPN, and he touched on some programs that are trying to go from good or respectable to the elite level. We spent some time on it yesterday. The Athletic is doing their state of the programs, and, there's some concern down in Texas, and then we look at Athlon in Nebraska the last week, the dreaded anonymous coaches deeming Nebraska the all-get-off-the-bus team. They look tough and imposing, but they'll screw up at some point, so don't worry about it. I mean, that's the word on Nebraska that Frosty and company are trying to change. I want to start with Texas, Coach, and as you look at that situation, as you have Texas poised to move to the SEC, and you have Sark that went 5-7, is Texas and their brass down there? Are they on the verge of being too impulsive when it comes to their expectations? And I look at Mac, and I look at kind of the chain of events, Coach, and the coaching changes that Texas has undergone. And I mean, is Sark in trouble already in year 2, or is it just getting turned up because of how bad year 1 went?
Probably a combination of the two. I think that no one expected Sark to go, 5-7 last year. I mean, and nobody did. Nobody saw that one coming. And I think it's all based on the image that Texas and Texas high school football and the kids who sign with Texas, the persona that it creates. You still have to go back and look at what brought Mac Brown down, and that was basically the entitlement issue. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that ever goes away, and if it does, it only goes away with the fact somebody that's so hard-nosed about it that just creates a culture of toughness, and you either buy in or you don't go. And so I don't know whether that's Sark. I don't know if that's his style. And I frankly sort of think that he's just the next guy in line for an entitlement problem. And Sark has yet to really prove himself out there. And I thought it was a really interesting hire. I know that he went to the Nick Saban School of Rehab, and that should automatically put you in a good position. But I don't know. I think that combination is such that I think he really is probably on the hot seat if he has any kind of a year that's close to what it was last year.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Colorado, Northwestern, and, of course, Missouri Hall of Famer. Coach, does Nebraska have an entitlement problem?
Oh, I think through the years that's true. I think there's been an entitlement problem. I think that the community, it's one of the things that you get when you have a community and a state that is so supportive of your program that those players reach a status within the state and in the community that can make you and make you feel entitled. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a double-edged sword there. That's what happens in states and programs where it is so important. But that being said, over the last 3 or 4 years, 5 or 6 years, 7 or 8 years, that you think that would have changed a little bit. But you would also think that of Texas. You would think that eventually people would see that that's what the problem is, or not problem, but that's certainly not the solution, and somehow work their way through it. But I think that's always been a bit of an issue there.
How do you deal with it? You mentioned culture of toughness and the double-edged sword, and I look at the years Coach Osborne was there, and yeah, you had players put on a pedestal, but man, there was an accountability in the program, and you're just waiting for things to pop. Tell me about your career. Did you ever run up against it at the spots you were at once you got to a certain level?
Well, I've never been in a place where there's entitlement. It's always been an uphill grind, and so I've never experienced that. And I know just talking to coaches that have worked at Nebraska, they've always felt like that's really an issue for them. But it's when you look back at Nebraska and even Texas before problems popped up, is they could run the ball when they needed or wanted to run the football. And that is a level of toughness. And so that, to me, sort of offsets some of that entitlement issue. When you can run the football, and as we're going to go on and talk about Nebraska, and you're going to talk about Mark Whipple, I know a little bit. And I'm just going to say, when you're a team that's tough enough to run the football when you want to run it, then you have a chance. And I think that part of the culture, that part of the inside culture, eliminates or negates some of that entitlement issue.
Tell me about Mark a little bit. You're close with him. His persona, his philosophy, he, to me, seems throwback, and while he's known for passing and getting the best player of the football and really doing wonders at a bunch of different spots and really developing quarterbacks through his career, he seems, when push comes to shove, he wants to be physical with you. Is that fair?
Well, Mark and I are friends. I haven't been in meeting rooms with him,
sure.
And I haven't been on a staff with him, so I can't really assess that. I know that the good ones that I've been around are going to find a way to, when it gets down to when you have to win a game by running the football, you are tough enough and good enough, and you've got a mentality that when I have to run it and I want to run it, I'm going to run it successfully. And that's usually a culture and a toughness issue. And so I think as I look at everything and as I think how Mark might assess it, or when Sean Watson was there, or some other guys that I've been around, that's the approach they're going to take. And while you can be electric and score points quicker and faster, and you need to have that passing game, and you need to throw when you want to throw. But there comes a time in almost every football game when you have to run a close game, when you have to run the ball, and you have to get first downs. And that means you have to run the ball effectively when you need to run it and when you want to run it. Those are the great teams, and the better teams, I might add. So my guess is whether that announcement's ever made to a staff or ever made to a team, I don't know. But I know deep down inside, most offensive coaches would tell you that.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, a couple of teams that are on that elite tier discussion point from Rittenberg's article. You have Michigan State and Mel Tucker, and also you have Texas A&M and Miami mentioned that are they're trying to figure out what's next for them, and then Oklahoma State. I want to end and wrap with Sparty and Oklahoma State. Your thoughts on Gundy and what Oklahoma State is going to be? Can they be the best in the Big 12, especially after this Oklahoma-Texas departure?
Absolutely, I think so. It's funny. Mary and I were talking last night about the coaches. We had dinner with Coach DiNardo, and we were just talking about the coaches that have been around a long time, and you go back and think of the coaches that have been in that position for the longest time, and Gundy and Ferentz have to be those two guys. But I don't have the whole list in front of me, but you think about how long he's been there, and I know when we played him the first year there, we actually shut him out. But you see what he's done and what he has access to. He's got a major financial supporter. He's in a very, very supportive state. Again, a state without professional sports makes it other than basketball, of course, but it gives you a chance with no pro football, and people are interested and supportive of the sport. He's in a good spot. You lose Texas and you lose Oklahoma. I mean, really, who else is out there that's really going to seize that? Baylor, I don't think so. You just don't have that same culture there. Texas Tech, certainly not. I mean, who's it going to be? So I think they are probably in a position to really take over that conference.
What about Mel Tucker? Is Michigan State a spot that can be 11-2, 12-1? I know D'Antonio had a great run. We're talking top 3, top 5, top 7 in the country, beating Ohio State. He's done it there not long ago, less than 10 years ago. And then Mel went 11-2, and I'm just wondering if Sparty's a one-hit wonder or if there is some staying power where they can compete again with Ohio State and have their way against Michigan. They'd been winning against Michigan up until last year. And they beat him last year, too.
Michigan has been like the way you described Nebraska a few minutes ago. They've found a way to beat themselves, and when it comes to playing that game. But when you think of D'Antonio, what do you think of?
Tough, just grumpy.
There you go. And it's yet to be proven whether Mel Tucker can produce that kind of team. Now, my guess is I think he probably can, but nobody knows that yet. Now, last year, we don't know. We don't know how good they can be consistently because, the running back had such a sensational year. But if they can maintain that, and like I said, I think he probably can after being with Mel for a year, then I think they are going to be poised to really be a factor in that league for a long time.
Gary Barnett with us. Coach, thanks for a few minutes today.
All right, Chris, great being with you.
Pardon the interruption, but I'd like to save you some money. I'm Brandon Vogel, managing editor of Hail Varsity, and I wanted to offer listeners of this podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we produce, 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at hailvarsity.com. Just go to hailvarsity.com/subscribe and enter the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's hailvarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it into Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel, and, of course, the managing editor of HailVarsity.com and magazine. I'm the last one to the party in the StreamYard, as I'm sending the group text. Where is everybody? Hey, jackass, get in yourself. Everyone's just kind of walked by the hotel lobby here. They get off the elevators to my left, and who's the dork in red with his little broadcasting kit? It's me. It's Chris Schmidt in Denver. We're streaming live here on ESPN Lincoln Facebook and on ESPN Lincoln's Twitter. Brandon Vogel is in his football office. Mark Kraynak is in his Husker den. Elijah Herbel is chained to the studio. Fellas, good morning. How is everyone? Kraynak, you got a grin going. What wheels are turning right now?
It's just funny. Based on background alone, you can tell who would be a managing editor for a publication versus a few guys that are just like, I could say words into a microphone. I read something once. Brandon's got a plethora of books behind him, looks very well read.
That he's read.
And, right. And then the rest of us are like, so it's good. It's funny.
Vogues, I have not tested the waterfall temperature. I avoided that. Everyone's walking off late Saturday night. Pretty busy Friday, late Friday night. Pretty busy Friday night for Nebraska. We'll start with the Friday Night Lights portion of another big Husker weekend, man. How are you? I know you love this time of year. You've gotten all of your previews knocked out. The yearbook is ready to be dropped here coming up shortly in less than a week. The yearbook party at Hail Varsity Club is going to be incredible. Where's your patience level at? Not for Nebraska football, but for football season in general to get here. Do you want it to hurry up, or are you still good here with a little summer chill before we go 1,000 miles per hour into a very interesting season? There's been a lot of interesting seasons. This may be the most.
Yeah, it might be. I'm still comfortable with summer chill for a little bit, because I think now is the time where you start to see those markers where it's like, 100 days out, 75 days out, whatever. We're somewhere in there. I think 75 or so. That feels close enough that it's going to come up pretty quickly. And, already making plans for Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis, and that's going to get here in a hurry. So I'm officially at a point now where it's like, okay, let's slow down and enjoy these couple of weeks that tends to be the off season, and in the Hail Varsity offices, at least, between the end of the yearbook and then we had a call on Tuesday about the August issue already. So try to squirrel away a little bit of time, but most of that time, free time that I do have, is just spent thinking about the college football season ahead anyway. So,
is it among the more interesting seasons simply because of all the movement, and it's just sort of like whatever chalk is, you just don't even know what that even means anymore. What is chalk? Like, what would a season going according to plan mean when you've had so much personnel movement?
Yeah, and personally, I'm super interested in that because, over the past decade or so, you kind of felt like you had a feel for how the offseason works a little bit on a broad scale. I mean, on an individual scale, there's always a wide range of outcomes, and Nebraska proves that probably as well as anyone. Yeah. But now, in a transfer portal era, it's like, well, what do we know about, what we thought we knew about kind of returning production and close wins versus close losses, is all of that altered? And I think it probably will have to be to some degree by just how quickly teams are able to flip rosters now. So from a strictly Nebraska perspective, I think this is the most interesting season in quite a while, because I wrote my column on this in the yearbook. The stakes are pretty clear. Like, we may not know the internal metrics, whatever those are that are going to determine what happens. But something changes on October 1st. The contract's reduced, the buyout comes down. That's an indication of a clear indication of the stakes here. And while I think every Nebraska season feels a little must win, like there's a lot of pressure to do well here, this one is a level I haven't encountered in my 11 years doing this. And then broadly on a national scale, it does become a bigger picture thing of like, well, how much do we know? I mean, I feel pretty confident that Alabama's going to be good again. But beyond that, like, there's this vast middle of college football where we don't know what this new era has done to teams in the offseason.
Brandon Vogel is with us, managing editor, HailVarsity.com and magazine, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Weekend edition of Hail Varsity Radio. As Vogues is in SEC country, Kraynak is in Omaha. Elijah comes to you from Lincoln. I am in, I'm further enough, far enough south of Buffland, but technically I'm in Pac-12 territory, which still seems weird to say. So when we talk that next mile marker, and that is media days, Vogues, what do you think the narrative is around the Big Ten about Nebraska right now? We know, and you nailed it, yeah, in a lot of years, the Nebraska question mark has been pretty visible with what's going to happen. But when it comes to the rest of the Big Ten, what's the thought on Nebraska when we get with Indy? I mean, where's Nebraska as a talking point in the rest of the league for 2022?
I think it'll be mostly about the amount of change that Nebraska has seen, and maybe not so much the coaches. I think there'll be questions about the new coaches and kind of how they assimilated in the spring, but that's kind of been processed already. I think, well, you look at, they've got 2 transfer quarterbacks competing for the starting job, and the most transfers in the Big Ten at this point. So I think that'll be the major talking point around the Huskers, because, I mean, you can look at the preseason win totals, not just from like power ratings, but also where those are being set for Nebraska in the betting markets, and say that, people think Nebraska should be decent at least. And it becomes a question of, okay, to get there, like on the scale of worst version to best version, what do you need from a Trey Palmer, a Casey Thompson, some of those other transfers? I think that'll be the big piece of it. And in a Big Ten context, because Michigan State just did something similar, I think there'll be a lot of echoes of that, fairly or unfairly. I mean, Mel Tucker happens to be in the conference, but it's kind of the one example you can point to right now of somebody who won big, rolling the dice in the transfer portal. There's not a lot of other examples of that, at least not to my knowledge. Maybe Western Kentucky would be one, but I think that'll be the major draw for those people who maybe see Nebraska in person at Big Ten Media Days, as opposed to us who, see them on a daily basis here, almost daily basis, starting at the end of July.
Brandon Vogel with us on Hail Varsity Radio. And as you dove into the Big Ten, I want to zoom in on Ohio State in particular. Now, look, Ryan Day's entering, is it year 3 now or 4? I get confused.
I think he's been there 37 years.
Yeah.
I think it's year 4.
Yeah, so he's entering year 4. So you are now almost completely distanced from Urban Meyer, and like almost, and from his imprint. And to me, it's always stood to reason that Ohio State's going to take a step back at some point, right? Talent or otherwise. Urban Meyer is pretty much the most winningest coach ever, right? Like he puts together a ridiculous winning percentage, and at some point, and you could ride those coattails for a while, But at some point, you're not Urban Meyer, or probably not Urban Meyer, right? So as you dove into Ohio State a little bit, is there any sign, and again, this could be wishful thinking, but is there any sign that you could see them taking a moderate step back, which would mean a 2-loss season versus a 1-loss season? It's all relative here, or do you see them as just still the hegemon, the one that's the out-and-out favorite in the Big Ten?
I think last year was their step back. And I thought it was the potential to be that. I remember writing the preview in last year's yearbook, and Ohio State wrecks the scale. You're talking about them on their own scale. And so last year's team, you had a redshirt freshman starting at quarterback. He was really good. He was a Heisman finalist. So things worked out okay there. But the defense was legitimately middle of the road, and it got their defensive coordinator fired, or he agreed to leave, however that was termed. And then they made a great defensive coordinator hire in Jim Knowles from Oklahoma State. So this year, I think they're really loaded for bear. That offense averaged 43 points, something like that. Lose 2 good receivers, still probably have the best receiver in college football. They're going to put up 40 points again. And if the defensive numbers come down, I mean, it's Ohio State and Alabama as the 2 favorites entering 2022 for me. So, but I'm with you, Mark. And I remember writing this after whatever Urban's last game was, that bowl game, writing after that, okay, it's Ryan Day's time, but Urban Meyer won 82% of his games, and it's just really, really hard to do that. We can all think Ryan Day is really good, but to be able to follow that up is almost impossible. And so far he's done it, and I don't see 2022 being the year where that gets off track.
Brandon, I mean,
dang it.
I think we all know that Ohio State is the team to beat within the Big Ten. I mean, everyone knows how much talent Ohio State has and how good they are. But it also feels like every single year there's at least one team in the Big Ten that kind of jumps up and outplays expectations, where you look at both Michigan State and Michigan last season. 2 years ago, I think of Indiana or maybe Northwestern. And the year before that, I think of Minnesota and that 11-2 season they had, where there's one team that it kind of comes out of the woodwork and nobody expects. Who do you think that team could be this season? And is there potential that Nebraska could be that team?
Nebraska might be the team that has the best chance to do it, because I think there's so much uncertainty around them. I think their ceiling is high enough that if they were to get there from this starting point, they probably are that surprise team. So it could be Nebraska, depending on how strongly you feel about Penn State. I feel like Penn State's kind of getting slotted in behind Michigan State, so say 4th in the East. Penn State, I think, has a chance to be a little bit better than that. And then, true dark horse, maybe Maryland. And it depends on that Maryland defense. If they can get any sort of resistance at all, I think that offense is poised to score a bunch of points and could win a handful of games that way. Again, we're talking Ohio State, Michigan in the East, but it's that kind of 3, 4, 5 range between Michigan State, Penn State, Maryland that would probably seem the most surprising. Unless Nebraska, jumps to maybe 8 or 9 wins, then that's probably the team that fits your description, Elijah.
Brandon Vogel with us, Weekend Edition, Hail Varsity Radio, managing editor for Hail Varsity, Brandon Vogel, author with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, where are you at with Purdue? The Purdue question. Oh, wow, Braum went 9-4 last year. Oh, wow, they smoked number 2 Iowa. Oh, wow, they lost a couple of oops games, and then with all of their NFL talent watching the bowl game, because, we're good. We're just going to get ready for the draft now. They still go beat a really, on paper, talented Tennessee team. Do they stack it, and are they too trendy to ride as a West favorite in a wide open West, or is Purdue forever going to be the team that, okay, they can have a 9-3 and 8-4 with a couple of wins, and then the follow up is bowlless or at best 6-6?
Yeah, it's been an interesting 2022 for Purdue because, okay, they end 2021 on a high note, and they are generating some very early buzz, in the Big Ten West to kind of be a 9-win team again and compete for maybe the Big Ten West. And I could see that. Lost Lambert, their defensive coordinator, Wake Forest. That's a pretty significant loss to me. And then post-spring, okay, lost Lambert, lost two of the best players in the Big Ten, David Bell and George Karlaftis. That's tough. But you're bringing back a really good quarterback off his best season. But then post-spring, they lose a starting safety to the transfer portal, went to Kansas. And then they lose Milton Wright to academic ineligibility. So in February, I probably looked at the West and said, if Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, or Purdue wins this, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if I keep Purdue in that list at this point. They could be. And, they're going to put up numbers. They're going to find a receiver. They've got a 4-star freshman coming in from Texas who I think is going to be really good. And they added a transfer from Iowa to help with that. Like, somebody's going to come up with those catches. It's just not many people have a David Bell, and Purdue doesn't at the moment. So I can't quite include them in that group. They're a team where if they ended up 7-5 or 6-6 wouldn't totally shock me. If they anything better than that, they probably overachieved a little bit given how much they had to replace.
We've talked a lot, Brandon, about football and how transient the rosters have been recently with some of the changes, allowing for more transfers. But it seems to have accelerated even in other sports too. And I'm wondering if you see it the same way. Baseball's always kind of had a pretty transient roster situation, but it seems even more so. Is that how you're seeing it too when you're looking at Will Bolt's program, and it's just like pretty much not all of them, but a big majority of guys that you heard all season, if you're listening on the radio or watching games, like, boom, they're gone. There's a lot of dudes leaving right now.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised. I've been a little surprised by the number of departures from Nebraska. Like you said, baseball was always kind of its own thing. Junior college kind of plays a different role in that sport. So you had a little bit more roster movement, and it's also a partial scholarship sport, which I think lends itself to a little bit more back and forth in terms of off-season moves. But you look at the list of guys that have left Nebraska, and you put it well. Like, these guys were fixtures in the lineup, and you go back to February, and maybe it was all too early, but you felt like this program was in a really, really good spot and kind of set for the next 2-3 years with this kind of young core of talent. You knew there'd be a little bit of adjustment, probably not to the degree that we saw actually in the 2022 season, but now it's and maybe this is a cross-sport thing going forward in college athletics, where you have those seasons where maybe you're young, maybe things don't go well, you have some expectations and you don't hit them. It almost feels like a reset. Nebraska football's so big, it doesn't quite feel that, but like within that context, Nebraska football feels about as close to that as you can get with the number of transfers they brought in. So it might just be a different era for college athletics in that regard.
Brandon Vogel's with us, Hail Varsity Radio Weekend Edition. And Vogues, before we wrap, I want to get your take. I want to go back to Nebraska, and I can't wait for the position breakdowns in the yearbook. Again, the yearbook release party coming up here the 23rd of June. So if you're heading up to Omaha for the CWS, make sure you swing by the Hail Varsity Club. Come see us on Thursday in La Vista. Just can't wait for the yearbook. Garrett Nelson on the cover. An amazing job by phenomenal staff that cover Nebraska for you with Hail Varsity. You can subscribe, hailvarsity.com/subscribe. Where's Gabe Ervin at for you in this running back conversation? We were both in Norman and just cringed for him. I salute his work ethic and determination to get back. And we're wondering what can be from this super talent in a really crowded room that brought in some dudes. And, man, word we're all getting is the running back room is really taken to Coach Applewhite, and he's a standard setter, and it's going to be good moving forward as long as Applewhite's in that room. But back to Irvin, what's his role? What's the ask of him in 2022?
Well, I think, so reports are he's a full go, which is very good news for Nebraska. I mean, being on the field from the very start of the season as a true freshman at running back is hard to do. And it's not hard to do in terms of carrying the ball necessarily. Like, there's a reason you're a Power 5 running back, right? You're pretty good when it comes to carrying the football. It's all the other things. It's getting used to the speed of the game and being able to pick up pass blocking and the assignment sound, all of that stuff. Urban's already checked that box. The fact that he was on the field that early tells you that he had. So I think the expectation for him then is to pick back up where that left off. But now I think that he's going to have to compete for that job. And that's good for Nebraska overall. You've got Urban. I think Ramir Johnson took big advantage of his opportunity and showed he can handle what they need to do there. Yant, if his offseason progress in terms of getting himself into what he feels is better shape for what he needs to do, and then you've got 2 new additions to add to the mix. So I'm expecting it to be a really competitive room. We'll see. Like, the fact that Nebraska got this far without a departure from that group, I think is encouraging. Doesn't mean it can't happen, after fall camp starts, but it seems to me like a room where you're going to have a ton of competition. Somebody probably takes the lead there as a lead back, but I think you'll see probably 3, maybe 4 running backs on a pretty regular basis during the season.
Last thought on that: Does Nebraska need the one guy, or can you do work with the we-back plus then some in 2022, right? I mean, I'm interested with the change of pace, the thumper versus the lightning guy. I mean, talk to me here a minute about how you foresee it being a success on the ground for Nebraska with all these kids in the room.
Yeah, I think you can do it, by committee for lack of a better term. There's still something to be said, I believe, for, allowing a running back to kind of work themselves into a game and ride a little momentum. But in today's college football, if Casey Thompson ends up being the starter, he's not going to have a Bijan Robinson standing next to him, in the shotgun. And it's guys like that where there's, maybe 10 or 12 of them in the country every year, where it's just like, well, we just give it to this guy as often as possible because he's that good. I don't know. We haven't seen that yet from anybody in Nebraska's backfield. So I think a by-committee approach can work, and it gives you the opportunity to ride the hot hand a little bit. It'd be nice to have one of those 12 or 15 running backs back there, and maybe the Huskers do. We just haven't seen it yet, but I can't go there until we get a little bit more proof.
Brian, an avid Husker fan, wanted to scream, "Go Big Red" here in Denver, Colorado's hotel lobby. He waves at you, Kraynak, and you, Brandon. He is now on the elevator, sadly. Well, no, he tipped the cap to you, Elijah. But he still thinks you drive a windowless van. I mean, that's just how it shakes out with the mustache. Vogues, real quick thought before we say goodbye on the yearbook. Again, just the pitch, brother, and it doesn't even really need to be a pitch. It's another fine work by you and the crew.
Yeah, 160 pages, about 50,000 words. So there's plenty to get you from there. From next week when it drops to Ireland, really in depth in terms of the position previews, and then the team and opponent previews, which a lot of stuff we talked about here. And then, of course, the whole front third of that book is what I consider, our best attempt, our best feature writing throughout the year. So some good stories there that I'm excited for people to see, that you can kind of sink your teeth into and sit with a little bit.
Kraynak, it'll be story time, man, over the Atlantic.
Let's do it. I plan to sleep, though, on a lot of that flight. So, yeah, maybe on some of the layovers. Amsterdam. Read a little Hail Varsity magazine in Amsterdam. Words I thought I would never say.
Fumblerooski, again.
Yep. Which I believe is, that's Dutch, right?
Yeah, I think so.
That term? Okay.
Vogues?
I'll come up with a prize. I don't know what it is yet, but for you to have a layover in Amsterdam, if we get a subscriber in Amsterdam, there will be a prize at the end of it.
May I ask what the prize is? In Amsterdam?
You can, but I don't know yet. I got 2 months to think about it.
That's pretty good. Vogues' Amsterdam connections will come through. I love it. Vogues, take care. Thanks for a few minutes today.
I'm looking up Dutch names right now. So it looks like Floris or Annika. We'll see if we can get Annika signed up.
Okay.
Excellent.
We're going to find an Annika in the airport. That'll happen. Yep. Brandon, take care, buddy. Say hi to Junior, and we'll make sure we get that home run ball for you in the altitude today.
Good deal. Thanks, guys.
See you, bud. There he is, Brandon Vogel, with us from HailVarsity.com and magazine. Good stuff for him. A quick timeout. He is Mr. College World Series with Westwood One. Gary Sharp going to be with us. The Iron Horse. We'll talk some ball as we roll forward on a weekend edition Hail Varsity presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Like what you hear? High-quality radio and podcast is part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
Glad to have you back.
Yes, sir. You heard me right.
Here are the guys, Schmidt and Kraynak.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're going to bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7.5 minutes after that, you're going to bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes out.
Excellent strategy, sir.
Back with your weekend editions here at Hail Varsity Radio in South Denver. The, I think, JV Southwest crew, they are wearing red, are loading up. They play this morning at, 9. We are off to Castle Rock at noon Central, and then it is Rockies baseball tonight for Husker night. We bring in the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, with us. He is.
Who do the Rockies got tonight?
I think it's San Diego, which will be great.
Nice.
But Sharpie, you know the NHL, brother, and it's Avs mania here for the Stanley Cup. I don't know that we can get into to the nosebleeds for 800. Sounds like across Coors, there's going to be of all watch parties. Have you, in your time in travels, have you ever got to participate in a finals level watch party ever?
Not a watch party, but when the Avs won the Stanley Cup with Ray Bourque, I went to one of the games. It was unbelievable. That was the old McNichols Arena, not the used to be the Pepsi Center. Now it's Ball Arena. Colorado is a good hockey town, and the Avalanche have been really good. And that scene on Wednesday night was incredible. And it'll be another one. That's a great Stanley Cup. But Colorado, Colorado's a good sports town. Unfortunately, they have the Broncos there, but they've been a good hockey town since the Avalanche moved from Quebec. Did I say that? Yes, I did.
Well,
Gary, it's
there's a Nordique jersey, but hanging behind the front desk here. I mean, it's really a cool jersey, but if someone from Quebec walks in here, they may lose it. I mean, it's a slap in the face as a reminder.
Look, I'm going to have to transition this from hockey to baseball because we have Gary Sharp on, and he's the quintessential baseball guy, to be honest, right? So, Gary, there's so much baseball I want to get into. Real quick, real quick, to kind of localize it to where Schmidt's at tonight, it's going to be Rockies Padres tonight. Tell me if you rock with me here on this. I feel like the Padres could legitimately change the sport to some degree and attract an entirely different legion of fans. Because I'm not sure on the major league level I've seen a team with swag, however you define it, quite like the Padres. Even their home environment is just different. Their young stars kind of behave. They're almost like, you know how Tennessee was like obnoxious this year with kind of their swag and celebrations? Padres are just more of like a professional, polished version of that. Do you agree that the Padres have something that could kind of reinvigorate the sport if they're to go on a run and actually advance to, you know, maybe a playoff finals or a World Series even?
Yeah, this might be the year. That's a great point, Mark, because this is the best start that they've had. And remember, probably the guy that has the most swag on that roster, Fernando Tatis Jr., hasn't even played this year. Yeah. I mean, imagine when he gets back. Yeah, they're a fun team. You know, they have some big personalities, and they're really good. You know, I think we're making the transition in baseball where, you know, the old school, get off my lawn, it's kind of like, okay, if the sport is going to evolve, it's evolving because you have younger players that have grown up, some of them in Latin America where the celebration is part of the game, that it makes the game fun. You know, I think people were put off by Tennessee, and maybe Tennessee pushed it to another level, but they knew what they were getting if they won or if they didn't win. You know, it was kind of interesting last night. Compared to the regionals and super regionals up here in Omaha in the College World Series, the stuff was kind of subdued. You didn't see a lot of bat flips. You had more business-like teams playing. But if baseball is going to attract a new generation, they have to make it a little bit appealing where guys can have fun. And San Diego is that. And I will guarantee this: if you're playing the San Diego Padres on Father's Day, do you even have a chance of winning if you're the Rockies tomorrow?
That's a really funny.
Probably not.
It took me like 4 seconds to understand that one. That's really good.
Thank you.
El Dia de Padre. That's very good. So another follow on baseball, College World Series field. You always want the College World Series. It's a great thing for the state of Nebraska, great thing for Omaha. But I have never seen a field with more kind of like Husker hate embedded with it than this one. So Texas makes it. You're like, Notre Dame makes it. You're like, come on. You know, Oklahoma, like what? Like what is happening here? Have you seen a field at the College World Series that is sort of less intriguing from that standpoint? Like where's the Stony Brook or the East Carolina or the something besides kind of these teams that you've seen so many times, and especially the ones that no love lost between Husker fans and some of these squads?
Yeah, it was interesting last night in the late game between Notre Dame and Texas because if you're a neutral Nebraska fan that comes to the College World Series, who do you root for? People found themselves, I think people found themselves rooting for Notre Dame. I'm going to tell you a quick little story. So Link Jarrett, I'm a huge Link Jarrett fan. He's the Notre Dame head coach. They could have been here last year, but they got beaten in the Super by Mississippi State. They're really, really good. I mean, what they did last night against Texas was pretty impressive. So he went to Florida State. He was at Florida State in the early 90s. His wife is a cheerleader. Former cheerleader at Florida State. His parents still live in Tallahassee. Oh, by the way, the Florida State job is open. A lot of people expect he'll be offered the job once the season is over. But he was on the sidelines for the 93-94 Orange Bowl when Florida State and Nebraska played. So talking to him earlier this week, I said, you know, people around here sometimes are a little iffy on Notre Dame. And I said, here's the way to warm people up for Notre Dame. Did William Floyd fumble going over the goal line? He said, absolutely he did.
He's in. Go Irish.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's now the favorite. What's the reception been, Sharpie, with Arkansas? That's a question I had and a lot of folks had, you know, as Dave Van Horn got again back to Omaha, you know, how things were chippy with Nebraska v. Arkansas a year ago. Is there still the soft spot for Van Horn and Arkansas with the Nebraska contingent that makes their way to Omaha?
Well, I think we'll find out today, but I imagine there will be. because of DVH. I mean, it's kind of hard to believe, and I said this to him yesterday. It's hard to believe he's been there for 20 years. You know, we just celebrated some anniversaries of Nebraska going to the College World Series under Dave, and he's been there for 20 years. You know, last year that was a hotly contested regional, and that was a super team. And Arkansas didn't make it. The last 3 years, the number one national seed, which has been great, hasn't made it here. They're a different team. They're kind of like a plucky underdog that is really good, that got hot at the right time, that you knew was going to be good. They just didn't have Kevin Kopps compared to last year. But I think people around here still remember not only what DVH did, put Nebraska baseball on the map, but what happened against Oregon State when he was on the cusp of winning his first national championship, because he's an elite coach in the game of college baseball. And you remember the misplayed pop-up in foul territory that kept the inning alive for Oregon State. They win that game. They force a Game 3. They win that game, and Arkansas's hearts are broken. Well, I think people are still like, oh, man, it'd be great to get one for DVH. So I don't think any carryover from last year will be prevalent. And you may never know, because there are so many Arkansas fans that have made the drive up here to Omaha. That ballpark this afternoon is going to be packed full of Whoop Pig Suey.
Gary Sharp's with us here on the Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Gary, I think you're nailed it with the fact that there's still a lot of love for Dave Van Horn in the state. And I think Arkansas will be somewhat popular up at Omaha this year. But when you look at just all the personalities on the rosters this year, you got the Hispanic Titanic and Ivan Melendez. You've got Sonny DiChiara, who is hitting bombs for Auburn while built like your dad. And then elsewhere you got Tim Elko, the mustache for Ole Miss. I mean, these are all guys who could end up being some fan favorites. So I want to get your power ranking of guys that are playing the College World Series this year that you think are going to end up being some crowd favorites in Omaha.
Well, for people that don't know, the Hispanic Titanic is not a boat. He's a baseball player who's got 32 home runs. With the guys, the ball yesterday at Charles Schwab Field, the ball carried. There were home runs. There were a lot of runs scored. A lot of people now are saying, hey, there's something wrong with the baseball, that it might be juiced, because home runs and offense are through the roof this year in college baseball. I think there's other things. Guys are a little bit older. They had the COVID year. You see 24-year-old guys that are on college rosters and the draft being cut down. So college baseball is loaded, especially at the plate. But in terms of the ranking, Ivan Melendez is great, and that's a great story. But how can, as you alluded to, Elijah, looks like your dad, he gives all of us middle-aged men. Sonny DiChiara, the first baseman for Auburn, he is Thicky Mantle. I mean, he looks like, he could be playing a different sport. He says, and he is not afraid to say it, I'm 6'1", 253 pounds. He's got a boiler. He's fun to watch. Oh, by the way, he's got 22 home runs. He's my number one guy that we're attracted to. And I think all the dad bods that will be sitting in the stands tonight watching Auburn Ole Miss play, they were like, man, how old is that kid? Check his birth certificate. That's what I look like out there playing in the old beer league on Sundays, still swinging the sticks.
Man. I was going to say, with DiChiara in particular, he is probably one of those can't-miss Kyle Schwarber. I think you have to go back to Kyle Schwarber, where it's like you see a guy come in, you're just like, that is just a classic, ridiculous slugger that's going to make it, right? They're going to make it, and you're going to see him in the big leagues at some point. You'd put DiChiara in that category too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I know when people look at baseball and they say, well, you have to be an athlete to be a baseball. Look at Prince Fielder. Look at Cecil Fielder. He doesn't have the greatest body, but gosh, he has great quick hands. His hand-eye coordination and the way he brings the bat through the strike zone, that's why somebody will play. You know what? He looks like that. He looks like Dan Vogelbach, who is making a living in the majors. But he can swing it, and he can hit the home run, and he's a lovable character that doesn't shy away from what he looks like. I think, that's the thing about college baseball is you look around, and as some of these rosters, I mean, there's guys that look like they should be playing football, not baseball. He's the guy that you go, okay, I'm interested. Thicky Mantle, playing first base. And then you see him swing the bat, and you're like, oh, boy. Man, there is part of a Mantle, a part of his nickname.
Yeah, he looks like beer league softball monster. Like
we need more John Kruk body types in baseball, don't we, fellas? We love it.
Tease 13 has got him like pegged. Just like, give us a decade.
Wow,
you know where you're going, bro.
That is such an old school softball reference. You get extra points today for that.
Man, this is good. Gary Sharp's with us, weekend edition, Hail Varsity Radio. Sharpie, we'll let you get out on this, and a lot of off-season factors for Nebraska as we're warming up here. Another Friday Night Lights
A thought on Davon Hall from Bell West, was part of the contingent, another in-state prospect. Nebraska has more and more in-state kids, and Hall just down the road from you. And then second part here, what is your feel or read on the Chubba Pretty momentum / storyline? That, okay, good story by the World Herald earlier this week on his injury, and how serious a contender is Chubba for that job. Hit both of those for me.
Well, I think Hall is an elite pass catcher. He plays in a great offense with Mike Huffman. We've seen that before with wide receivers that have played there under Huffman, from Cade Johnson, C.J. Johnson, Keegan Johnson, Xavier Betts, the Duckers. If you're playing in that offense and you're a pass catcher, Caden Helms, Micah, Riley Ducker, you're going to catch passes, and it's going to make you, improve your game to keep up with everybody else. And he's somebody that, popped onto the radar as an 8th grader, and he's continued to get better. He's definitely on Nebraska's radar, and you don't have to go to Louisiana to get all your wide receivers. And Mickey Joseph realized that if we have a guy in the backyard like Hall that can play in the Big Ten, that's the key. Because I think Mickey looks at some of his wide receivers and go, why are they here? They can't play for me. They can't play in the Big Ten. But when he's aggressive after Hall, that shows you that Mickey, who has a keen eye for talent, says that guy can play in the Big Ten. We can't let him get away. And Nebraska's doing the right thing in recruiting him, and he showed up last night. I mean, that kind of setting is where he's going to thrive. Now, the other thing to keep in mind about Purdy, we are 10 Saturdays away, beginning today, we're 10 Saturdays away from the start of the season. We are getting into the peak off season where you got to create content, you got to talk. That was a good article on Purdy, and he's somebody that you would have liked to see at full strength for the first time in his career to go through a spring football. I think he's a threat. I still think this is Casey Thompson's team, and I think Casey Thompson is operating like he is QB number one. But I think the reason why they haven't anointed Thompson or said he's number one is because they want to see Purdy at full strength, and that's a huge benefit for Nebraska. The more that Purdy can develop and push Casey Thompson, but also be in a spot, guys, we know this. At some point during the upcoming season, the backup quarterback is going to play an extensive amount of football. And if Purdy is up to speed and he's right there with Thompson, you're not going to see a drop-off. But you also have to think, all right, Purdy's looking at this as, okay, I'm going to challenge Casey Thompson. I'm going to be right there with him. But maybe Casey Thompson is a one-year guy, and that's Purdy's job next year. I think that's a nice little duel to watch when we get to fall camp. But Casey Thompson's number one, Purdy's number two. And then number three, probably Smothers because of experience. But I think Nebraska likes where they could be with 1 and 2.
Gary Sharp with us. So you just laid out the quarterback rundown. Would it behoove Nebraska to get Smothers some red zone time, Sharpie, like Minnesota did a year ago? I mean, do you find a role for Logan? Yes, he's a backup. Yes, he's a guy who played well enough to win against Iowa. But this is where Nebraska's going direction-wise with either Thompson or Priddy at quarterback. So Smothers, you're going to stick and stay, dude. Good for you. But let's get you some role with the run-pass option side of things. Could that be part of his future in 2022?
Under Mark Whipple, I don't see it. And I'm not a huge fan of that because I think maybe you have a quarterback QB number one that you feel confident running that. I just don't think Whipple is the kind of guy that does that. Smothers is going to have an important fall. Logan, I think Logan feels like he's still in the hunt. But can he do enough to be right there with Purdy? I believe, guys, that Nebraska feels pretty good about their quarterback room. And they feel like you can go past one and you get to two and maybe even three, that if need be, they're going to step on the field and you're not going to take a major step back. That hasn't happened in a while, that Nebraska has the depth, the kind of depth, and the kind of feeling they have about their quarterback room, which is a good thing. But they need QB1 to feel. You got to feel really good about QB1. Well, I think, guys, to announce the Big Ten Media Days, I wouldn't be surprised if, one, Casey Thompson is a captain, or two, Casey Thompson is one of the three that represent Nebraska.
Absolutely. We'll be headed to Indy soon enough as the coaches are down for a little coffee and eggs here. Southwest Remax ready to go today at 11:30 and use that altitude
for good measure, Junior got a couple of bunts down yesterday, and we are 2-0. Sharpie, always appreciate you, your knowledge, and thank you, as busy as you are with your Westwood One duties and College World Series coverage. Thanks for giving us some time today, bud.
Hey, thanks, guys, and to you, both of you, and the rest of your listeners. Happy Father's Day to everybody.
I appreciate you, Sharpie. Thanks so much. That is good stuff. The Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, with us. Kraynak, plans tomorrow? Or you have ball, or what do you got going this weekend?
No ball tomorrow, which is good, man. Gonna just relax, sleep in for Father's Day. Hopefully, we'll see.
Yeah, Kraynak's smiling about that. Elijah, you're umping a bunch of ball games.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try to avoid getting heat stroke. So that's my plan for the weekend.
That's a solid outlook right there. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for spending time with Hail Varsity Radio Weekend. Monday, we will have College World Series coverage. No Hail Varsity Monday. I'll be making my way back from Denver, but we'll be ready to rock on Tuesday at 4. And Kraynak, best to you. Elijah, appreciate you much. Get the podcast. And be sure to subscribe to that, Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Happy Father's Day. Take care. Talk to you next week on Hail Varsity.
A Hurrdat Media Production.